The data retention policy and the meaning of metadata. We get to the bottom of the federal government's new national security policy and what it means for whistleblowers, coming up on the show. From Melbourne, you're watching The World from Below. I'm Lizzie O'Shea. The federal government continues to come under fire for its proposed changes to national security legislation, including from within its own ranks. Liberal backbencher Alex Hawke has criticised the policy of data retention, citing privacy concerns and also the need for a right to delete. The reforms also contain stringent punishments for unauthorised use of intelligence material. The Journalists Union, the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, said in a submission that the proposed laws would criminalise journalists and journalism. Right to Know, a coalition of media organisations including major commercial and public broadcasters, has also criticised the bill. The US government has begun airstrikes in Iraq, with the incursion expected to last for months. Iraq is facing disintegration, with a civil war that commentators predict could be as bloody as the civil war in Syria and potentially last longer. The recent seizure of Mosul by fighters from the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, marks the end of the post-2003 era. Successive US administrations have sought to build a coalition amongst Iraqi opponents of the old regime of Saddam Hussein, seeking to create a new Iraq in which the Kurd, Sunni and Shia communities shared power in Baghdad. That experiment now appears to have failed, with Sunni extremists benefiting indirectly from US attempts to fund anti-Assad forces in neighbouring Syria. ISIS militants have now superseded Al-Qaeda as the most powerful and effective jihadi group in the world and have declared a caliphate across the Iraq-Syria border. Prime Minister Tony Abbott has not ruled out Australia's participation in military action in Iraq.
Well, we certainly don't rule that out. We're talking to our partners, and our partners in this instance are certainly much wider than simply the United States and the United Kingdom.
The federal government continues to pursue a controversial refugee deal with Cambodia. Immigration Minister Scott Morrison was set to travel to Cambodia this week under a shroud of secrecy, where it is speculated he'll sign off on the deal. It is reported that the Australian government will pay Cambodia $40 million to take up to 1,000 refugees from the detention centre on Nauru. There are currently 1,100 asylum seekers held on Nauru. It emerged this week that Australia participated in the UN Universal Periodic Review, which criticised Cambodia for human rights abuses earlier this year. Australia commented that it was concerned about allegations of electoral irregularities in Cambodia and particularly about the disproportionate violence against protesters, including detention without trial. Various human rights groups have expressed concerns over the refugee deal along similar lines. The Cambodian government has previously sent asylum seekers back to their home countries despite facing persecution. Up to 45% of Cambodians live in poverty. A majority of Australians no longer think it matters which major party is in government, according to a recent study headed by the Australian National University and the Social Research Centre. People's satisfaction with democracy fell from 86% in 2007 to 72% in June this year. Only a minority of Australians now believe it makes a difference which party is in power, with the figure plunging from 68% to 43%. A Lowy Institute poll taken earlier this year found that 40% of Australians no longer believed democracy is the best form of government. Hamas and other groups have expressed cautious optimism that a deal will be reached with Israel to end the month-long war on Gaza. Israel has reportedly dropped its demand for demilitarisation of Gaza. It has maintained its demand for a complete halt to hostile action from Gaza, including rockets. It is also seeking control of border crossings between Gaza and Israel and for public works in Gaza to be carried out only via the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian groups are demanding the reopening by Egypt of the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Sinai and to expand the range and quantity of goods imported from Israel to Gaza. They are also demanding increased rights for Gaza fishermen. It appears that the Palestinians have dropped the demand for the construction of a seaport and reopening of the airport in Gaza, both of which were part of the Oslo agreements settled over 20 years ago. Negotiations continue about the rights of Palestinians travelling between the West Bank and Gaza. The deal is due to be presented to the Israeli cabinet, but they may face an uphill battle getting the deal approved, with several ministers remaining opposed to any negotiated end to the Gaza conflict. Over 1,900 Palestinians, the vast majority civilians, have been killed in the recent Israeli military campaign. Tens of thousands of people have lost their homes. Foreign Minister Julie Bishop hosted the US Secretary of State John Kerry and Defence Secretary Chuck Hagel in Sydney this week. Australia has agreed to cooperate with the American ballistic missile defence systems in North Asia. The deal also involves the deployment of 2,500 US Marines in Darwin, a move which Minister Bishop described as the natural evolution of the alliance. And those are the stories that we've been watching this week. We'll be back after this short break to talk with our guest, cybersecurity expert and author, Dr. Sulet Dreyfus.